So, welcome to the 10th episode of Slice of Time Street Photography Podcast. First, a quick thank you to everyone listening in. A big thank you to everyone who has sent me feedback on their likes and dislikes. I greatly appreciate that. I'm happy to have made it to 10 episodes already. So, let's hope that number keeps growing, obviously. Today, I'm joined by Matt Hall, aka The 13thsecond, a street photographer, from Margate. I think his work speaks to me because of the colorful and maybe even cheery photos he makes. Always people oriented, but also almost entirely anonymous, which I very much appreciate in his work. So, hi Matt, could you maybe introduce yourself shortly a bit?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Fred. Thanks for inviting me onto your podcast. As I said, I'm Matt Hall. I'm a street photographer from the UK. I've been working in street photography probably for about 8.5, 9 years now. And I've kind of refined my style to a point now where, I can kind of go out and just look for things. I'm not that reliant on light as much as I used to, or location. So, beforehand I was very much a case of architecture, get the human element in there. But now I'm quite happy to wander around and then just look for things. I'm
And
also
like immediately,
I'm in a lucky position whereby photography is my job now. I spent 25 years in the construction industry, but those days behind me, and now I can be full-time creative.
is like really like full-time street photography or?
Full-time photography, probably 80% of it, I would say, is street photography. I run workshops, one-to-ones as well as groups all over the country. The other photography I do more the commission work or some more commercial stuff. I can still retain my style, so I'm not tied to any rules. I can use natural light or any available light that I choose, so I can hold on to my style as opposed to just knocking out any generic photograph.
Yeah, that's cool. And I was curious because you mentioned like you weren't really depending on light anymore, and that you made a switch from architecture to what you do now. Was that like a deliberate choice or was it more like a natural evolution?
Yeah, it was. Well, I guess both, because to start with, it was me going out when I was shooting in Cambridge, where I grew up and I lived for all of my life until 5 years ago. I'd be going out and I'd be taking photographs of the architecture, and it was only when the human element kind of snuck in to almost ruining my photographs. Well, I thought that this is actually better with people in it. So then it just became a challenge to sort of learn how to develop my photography in a way where I could ensure there's a human element in it.
Okay.
And then in
So
true candid style, obviously it's like I need to do it without them knowing, that I'm doing it.
so first you were into architecture and then it kind of evolved into street photography, or?
Yeah, it was very much
Okay.
architecture. It was very much me walking around the streets of Cambridge, almost appreciating where I lived for the first time, because I've never walked aimlessly around the city before. I've always lived there, but never appreciated it. But I've told the story quite a few times now. The main reason I was out and about was because my youngest child at the time just wouldn't sleep in the house or in a buggy. So I would literally strap him to my chest in a sling and then walk around Cambridge for hours just so he could get some rest and we could get a bit of sort of peace and quiet. And I bought a camera to document my children growing up. And I just started seeing all the architecture and also there's some crazy characters about. So I just thought I'd start taking the camera out on these walks. And it kind of moved on and on from there. And before I knew I was doing street photography, but I didn't actually know street photography was necessarily a genre until I stumbled across an Elliot Erwitt book in a bookshop when I was trying to buy a how-to photography book, almost to improve my photography. And then from then on, I was hooked.
Okay, cool. And was there like a history of photography before buying the camera for your kids, or was it like in your family or whatever, or?
When I was younger, I just used to have some 35mm sort of point and shoot cameras. I've found some of the photos from those days, and they're all terrible, all blurry, all out of focus. Rushed shots of my childhood friends, and so yeah, I didn't know what I was doing at all. But I remember having lots and lots of sort of point and shoot cameras kicking around the house, um, and then we had like a Polaroid camera almost as a gimmick kind of thing when they came out. I've actually still got it now. Um, and then I went through a lot of wilderness years where photography wasn't. I appreciated photography, but I wasn't actually practicing it.
Yeah, it wasn't really like in your life or something. It wasn't like that you would go to museums specifically or buy photo books. It was just like something that existed, or yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That's
It was just there, but I didn't appreciate it. But it was. I suppose it was when camera phones started coming out, where it was everybody had a camera and you started taking photos. And also Instagram, I guess. Like one of my friends like put me onto Instagram ages and like when it first came out, and I just thought it was the most ridiculous thing ever. I just didn't understand why you needed it. Um, I'm quite like that. Really, I'm stuck in my ways, and, but it was quite fun. It was just another way of like communicating with someone, but with pictures when it first came out.
yeah.
Um,
So
so
Instagram kind of influenced your photography in that sense, or
in a way, it kind of reintroduced me to photography because of the accessibility of it. Because you've got a camera there on the phone, albeit a terrible camera when it first came out. Um, but and yeah, and then from there, I suppose you're just absorbing lots and lots and lots of images. So, well, in those days, it wasn't street photography for me, but it was photographs of my friends doing things, and it just became fun and, like I say, accessible. Um, and then when my first child was born, I started taking photos of him with I can't even remember what phone it was at the time, um, but there's an app called Hipstamatic. You might be aware of it.
heard of it? Yeah.
And that was quite fun because then you could add like specialist filters and like lens simulations and whatnot. And yeah, so I had fun playing around with that. But I wanted to get into photography, so that's when I went and bought an entry level um, Fujifilm camera, and then it was yeah from there it
It's
got
very cool.
serious.
Yeah. And what made you click? Like, at what point did you find yourself able to call yourself like a photographer, but also a street photographer? Because I find a lot of people struggle with that question.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Really, I mean, but only when I started making money out of it, I suppose, because and it's a common trope at the moment. Everyone is a photographer. A lot of people. Everyone's got cameras. Or not everyone's got cameras, but everyone's got camera phones, and a lot of people have got cameras. Um, and if you go on holiday, everyone's got a camera in their hand. They're all taking photographs. So um, if I was like that, I probably wouldn't call myself a photographer. I'd call myself, just someone with a camera. But now I'm actually making money from it. I'm a bit more confident in saying, well, no, I am actually a photographer. That's what I do because I'm making a living out of it. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, to me, it's like at some point you have to call yourself a photographer first before you can make money, I think. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Um,
there's hobby photographers as well, isn't there? You can say because I have a lot of people on my workshops, and they say, "Well, I'm just a hobby photographer," and you look at their work and you just think, "Man, your work's better than my work." What are you talking about? And I think if it's taking that step, isn't it, and pushing yourself out of a comfort zone and thinking, well, I could actually make a living out of this, but not a lot of people can, and it is quite tricky making money out of any kind of photography, really.
yeah. Yeah, I do it full time as well, but street photography for me is a hobby, and it's like I do portraits and event photography for corporate, so it's totally different. But it's not always the easiest. Um, but that's for me like street photography is like it's a hobby. I take it fairly serious as well, obviously. So for me, it's like very interesting to hear all these people talk about it. Um, And in that case, because you do street photography like 80% of the time, you said, like, do you feel like, and it's like street photography is an artistic discipline. Mostly I find. Is there like for you a pressure to do it like full time? Is it like something like how do you keep it fresh for yourself?
No, so when I do it full time, I'm literally teaching people and showing them how
Okay.
to shoot in the style that I shoot, because um, there's, as you're aware, there's lots of different types of street photography. I think some are more attuned to be able to like transfer the knowledge and the how to do it than others. I think the juxtaposition style is really tricky. You could walk for weeks and weeks and weeks with a student and not actually show them anything to take a photograph of. You can show them maybe the pointers and anticipations, what to look out for. That could work, but at the end of the day, they're probably going to go away with not a lot of an idea of what's going on. They need to practice and be out there all of the time. Whereas I think my style of photography, because it's a little bit more abstract and creative, that is, you could actually just go and park yourself somewhere and wait for the situation to happen. You know, because I'm working with layering and textures and all those sort of things. They're everywhere. So as long as you can tune your eye to see those, you can then start building a photograph.
Yeah, very true. But that's what I find cool in your work. That it's very layered indeed. It's very colorful, kind of abstract. Uh, the colorful aspect as well, like it jumped in my eye. Like you don't have any black and white photos online, I think. Is there like a reason?
Some old ones. So when I started, um, I was shooting color, but then when I discovered street photography as a genre and like was looking into Irwit and Bresson and looking through all these books, everything's black and white. So in my head, I just thought, well, that's how it needs to be. So I was out shooting monochrome for maybe about 18 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's only when I started looking more into street photography and I started looking at all the masters that are working in colour, that's when I just thought, well, why am I shooting black and white? This is so much nicer. And the world's in colour. And so, yeah, I haven't looked back. I haven't actually shot monochrome in ages, and I'm not even tempted. Obviously, I shoot in RAW, and so there's always the option to go black and white, but I'm never tempted to think, oh, what does this look like in black and white?
No, true. Yeah, I can imagine that. I also think like your style is very color oriented indeed. But it's yeah, if you like Henri Cartier-Bresson, he was like I just read his biography. He was infamous for hating on color photography, even. So it's maybe not always the best introduction to street photography if you like color. Yeah, like the guy made great photos, but yeah. Um, Yeah, so for the color for me, it's always like you keep like a natural style. It's not too aggressive, like very saturated. Like for example, I forgot his name now. Saul Leiter. He's like very saturated, but for you, it's like this very. It's a lot of blue, but still kind of like a cozy, warm blue. I find.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't. As far as editing goes, I don't really tweak colours very much. I admit to shoot. I shoot Fujifilm, and so I do shoot with a simulation on, and so it's very much a case of what I see through the camera is what I'm taking the photo of.
Yeah.
That's going to be what the image is. So
So you use the JPEGs or?
no, I shoot in RAW, but I mean, a lot of the time, my tweaks are like minor. But yeah, it's just a habit of mine. Like I said before, I'm incredibly lazy. I probably could and should like just shoot JPEG and just leave it at that. But yeah, sometimes when I go into Lightroom, the editing suite, I'll sometimes throw it back into the film simulation. But other times, just think, well, it looks nice as it is. But I quite like the muted colours and the muted tones. I think there seems to be quite a lot of fashion, especially with street photography at the moment, where there's a bit more saturation or there's a lot of blues and everything's looking a lot more cinematic, which is great. I mean, they're awesome images to look at, but it's not a true reflection of what they're taking a photograph of. I think a lot of that is lost.
Yeah, no, but I think it's cool like because there's like I enjoy editing quite a bit. Like I find it fun. I try not to oversaturate as well, but it's fun to hear like how you say like your editing is minimal. Uh, and it's that's okay. Like I find that it's in street photography there's a lot of strong opinions, but I think most of it is like you can just decide for yourself. Like there's no right or wrong, mostly. Um, so that's cool. So
It's all about creativity, isn't it? And
yeah,
some people find their creativity in their editing suite, and like can really get a buzz off of that, and they love to spend the time there. I'd rather spend the time on the street and try and get it right there. Um, yeah, I find editing really, really tedious, and to the point where my eyes are closing looking at photographs. If I've got a lot of images to edit, yeah, I can't bear it. It's hard work. If I can't edit something in a matter of minutes, like then I'm out.
you're done with the photo. Yeah, I kind of know it. Yeah. So you were talking about creativity and like documenting what's out in the streets. But I recently saw this one question somewhere, and was like, how much of your photography is actually documenting the street, and how much of it is actually documenting yourself? And I found it very interesting because in your work, I find there's like a very, like, regardless of where you are, there's a solid, I'd call it, yeah, in Dutch it's a red thread, like leading threads through all your work that's kind of similar no matter what if you're in Cambridge or in Margate. So how much of it is
Yeah, well, I don't see myself as I don't think I'm documenting the street at all. To be honest, I
okay?
think if anything, I'm now maybe I used to more when I started out. Or if you see a scene unfold in front of you, obviously, yeah, there's the photograph. But for me, yeah, I'm not that kind of street photographer. I am more of I try to make a pretty picture. So I'll be looking to see how much I can include into a shot to almost using it as a paintbrush, like using the camera as an art tool as opposed to a device for documenting the world as it is. Uh, I've said it before. There's a lot of great photographers out there that are doing the documentary stuff, and the big wide angle scenes and the juxtapositions. They're amazing, but I'm terrible at that sort of stuff. What I want to concentrate on is just challenging myself and making sure what I want to include is in the shot and trying to include as much interest as possible.
Yeah. And like how deliberate are your shots? Because like you mentioned, like you really go to look for layers. There's
But that's
you go
my
look,
bit of digging.
no worries. Um, so you look for layers, you look for all this kind of stuff. How much of the thinking process is like consciously, and how much of it is kind of like instinctively for you?
Um, Now I'd say it kind of is. It's all consciously and instinctive. So it's almost like I could see a scene, so I'd look for a patch of light or um, a nice backlight. I sometimes call it a highlight or nice backdrop, something that I want to take a photograph of, but I also want to have the human element in it. So it's been said before the different types of street photography, the hunting, the fishing, all that sort of stuff. So I'd say maybe um, 80% of the time I'll be doing the fishing. I'll be sitting there waiting for a scene to unfold. But to me, that's a fairly straightforward shot, just looking at a wall with someone walking past. So I'll then think, okay, well, what can I stick in front of it? What can I add into the foreground to add a layer? Or is there an opportunity to get a reflection of what I'm looking at? And if so, can I get something in the foreground of the reflection? Or you start building up that interest in that regard. So it's all conscious. But before go out there, I'm always thinking, how can I elevate a shot? How can I just take it away from just being one boring two-dimensional photograph? How can I
Yeah.
start having interest?
Yeah, correct. So like instead of just like someone in front of a wall, how can you add a foreground element or a reflection somewhere? Or yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah,
Ultimately, you think about how you're looking at a photograph. I would like the person viewing my work to think, "Oh, how's he done that? What's this? I know that location, but how's he framed that? What's he done to do that?" And but I'm always about using the environment that's in front of me. I don't start taking out things out of my pocket to create frames or. I mean, obviously, that's another brilliant creative outlet, why not? But yeah, I don't do that. I just look around and think, okay, well, there's this tree. I can shoot through the tree and use the leaves to create a frame, or I don't know. There's always mostly not always, but there's nearly always an opportunity to create more interest than what you see in front of you.
True. I agree on that. Yeah. Um,
And a lot
and
of it, this is actually all born from shooting Cambridge sort of non-stop for sort of 5 years. It's there's a finite amount of streets, and when you're walking the same streets and you're seeing the same scenes, and a lot of the time the same people as well. You see the same people walking the same streets. You're there, you're shooting kind of the same time of day every day because that's your free time. But you see how the habits of people. They might be on their lunch break as well. They might be walking around. So you're seeing the same characters in the same scenes, and it does get a bit tiresome. You start thinking to yourself, how can I change this up? How can I challenge myself? What can I do to keep it fresh and exciting for myself as a photographer? Yeah, otherwise you're just taking the same shot over and over and over again.
true. Yeah. That's what I like. For me, like I find that I'm struggling in my small city. But if I just looked up the population sizes of Margate and Cambridge, and I'm still in a city that's 3 or 4 times as big as that. So for me, it's like putting it in perspective now. For like, okay, my city isn't that small as I expect. But it's cool that you, instead of being annoyed about your city and or the size of your city and finding new places to go, you find you challenge yourself for new angles. I think that's a very cool mindset. Is that something that you like kind of teach in your workshop, or how do you teach that, or how do you go about it? Was it like something you developed over the years, or?
It's something that I have to. Yeah, I kind of like I say I have to keep everything fresh and exciting and interesting for myself. It's something I had to develop, or I had to change up anyway. Um, and and that's transferable. So yeah, when I moved to Margate, which is significantly smaller than Cambridge, and what you said, Cambridge is in itself quite small anyway, especially the city centre where I used to shoot. You kind of have to know what to do with a small amount. You have to look harder. You have to start like focusing on the smallest things, and that's where, for me, the textures came into it. I do a lot of reflection work, obviously, and there's different windows all over the place. So it's just giving yourself another perspective of what you would normally see. And like I say, it is transferable. And to a degree, my workshops, all I'm doing is fast tracking people from where I was when I started out to kind of where I am now, and just saying, well, okay, you're looking at that, but why don't you look at this as well, and start adding that into it. And yeah, it's quite interesting seeing people's reactions. It's like, oh yeah, of course, why don't I start looking at it like this? Obviously, it takes a lot of practice, and it takes to actually sort of get it right and to hit one location and shoot in that manner. But yeah, it's a lot quicker than the years I spent getting to that point.
No, yeah, true. And I think that the workshop thing is like, as you said, like it's not really like it's fast tracking. It's not really like telling people something like you can find on, like most of the information I think you can find on yourself if you take the time and if you take the practice and everything. But it's, yeah, the fast tracking I like how you said that, because I think that's how it usually is. And I think that's the most valuable as well. Like street photography to me is like you need to practice it. Like if you don't go out, well, depends on your time schedule, of course. Like if you have another job, you can't go out daily all the time. But it's like it's kind of like sports. Like the more you train, the better you get.
Definitely, yeah, yeah.
And sometimes you need a personal coach, and that's for me the workshop. So that's great. I
Yeah,
think.
sure. And even the professionals, I get a lot of people that are way more advanced at photography than me. I still consider myself very basic. I know the exposure triangle,
Yeah.
and everything else on my camera is turned off. When I get people coming along and they say, "Well, why are you telling me to shoot f16 and blah 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 and dynamic range this and this that," and I was like, "Well, because you want to know how I shoot. This is how I shoot. Just try it. If you don't like it, just shoot shoot how you want to shoot." It is, yeah, it's quite interesting, and also some of them just talk about all the technical ins and outs of photography, and I have no idea what they're talking about because I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not a gearhead. I'm not technical. I just know how to use my camera, and that's it. And it's yeah.
Are you like you put your settings in for the day and that's that, or
No, I'm always tweaking. I'm always fiddling
still
around.
okay?
Like I say, to me, it's like a paintbrush. I'll be there, and I can just be like making small adjustments until I'm quite happy with where it is, and then it's just wait for the human element to enter the scene, and yeah, there's my finished painting kind of thing. So,
And is it like, do you sometimes stay like very long at places to find the right human element? Because like I see a lot of strong silhouettes and profiles of the people in your portfolio. So like I can assume like sometimes it's waiting for like 5 or 6 people to pass. Um,
yeah, sometimes. So the whole silhouette thing is even that can be quite boring to shoot. Um, so shooting, just taking a photograph of a person, for me, that anyone can do that. Just take a photograph of a person. Um, the first challenge for me was to like know where to stand to create a silhouette, and sort of appreciating where the shadow hits the spot, and then how to use it to create a silhouette. So that was the first stage, I guess, when I'm trying to improve my photography. And shooting silhouettes is really unforgiving, very forgiving, because it doesn't rely on having a strong subject as such. You can have someone with a massive nose like me, and you can't see it because they're in a silhouette, and they could be wearing a terrible shirt again like me, but you can't see it because they're a silhouette, and they could be walking away from you or towards you. No one really knows, male, female. It's there is quite a lot of advantages of shooting silhouettes.
okay, yeah. I also find like for some silhouettes, it's the opposite. Like it gives very strong. Like I'm looking on your website. There's like some like like a baseball head or like a head or women with a ponytail. Like it gives like a very strong idea of the subject without really revealing their face as well. Uh, I find, but yeah,
Yeah, it adds that element of mystery to like who is this person, and yeah, and from the point of view, if someone was to confront you and say, "Did you just take my photograph?" You could say, "I did take your photograph. Do you want to see it?" And because they're not fully visible, they're not going to sort of moan about it. Yeah, so there's a little bit more of a little bit more of armor if you are confronted by somebody angry. They can see you're being creative, and it's like, oh, actually, that's really cool. You can't tell it to me.
yeah. But that's not mainly the reason you started doing this. I think like there wasn't like a wave of bad reactions on the street that you were like, okay, I have to change up
No. I've only actually been confronted 3 times,
times.
and they
I
all
find it funny how every street photographer has like the exact amount of like, this is how much I got into trouble, let's say.
yeah, yeah. You do remember? Well, yeah. The first couple was when I was a lot sneakier in my approach, um, and I shudder to just remembering how awful it was the way I used to shoot. So it's sort of sneaky and unconsidered. It wasn't shooting from the hip, but similar style. When you shoot from the hip, so you don't have no idea what you're taking a photograph of. And yeah, and I was just walking past this guy a couple of times trying to get a photo of him. He was like, "Why are you taking a photo of me?" And delete that immediately. He was like, "Ah, yeah, okay." And it was from that moment I just thought, "Well, I'm not going to shoot like this because it's not fun." Like I said, it's not considered. Yeah, it's not photography. So yeah, I vowed never to shoot that way again, and I never have. It's always more. I'm obvious, hiding in plain sight, just taking photographs of people and just using other techniques to stay hidden.
Yeah, and so that interaction with the guy really made you like switch up consciously, like, okay, like I have to, this what I'm doing is not really entirely correct, or that, or was
Yeah,
it like a longer period?
I mean, morally it wasn't correct. Artistically, it wasn't correct. It was just terrible. You could fill a memory card up, and I know some people still shoot that way. I still see people like shooting in that kind of way now. Um, and I just sort of kind of have to shake my head and hope that they change their ways as well. Because you can fill a memory card up during the day, and then you just get home, and then you're just looking through the photos, almost hoping to find a good one. that you can say, well, this is street photography. I mean, yeah, okay, it is street photography, but it's not. I don't know. It's just not good. It's not. It's not good practice in my.
Yeah, there's no value in like there's no artistic value, but there's also like no documentation value or reporting value. It's just a photo of someone in the street. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the last. Well, it wasn't the last time actually. That was the time that made me change my shooting approach. Um, and then the last time was just a very drunk lady shouting at me for taking photographs of children, which I don't generally do. But again, it was a silhouette type affair in a fun fair. Um, and yeah, anyway, one. Yeah.
But she wasn't like related to the children. She was just like
I
a
don't know. There was
random.
a lot of children. She had about 8 children like following her around. But like I say, she was quite drunk, and she went around every. She said she'd told everybody that worked in the fair what I was doing, um, and I just tried to explain to her what the situation was. And I didn't leave. I carried on shooting, and I actually went around talking to everybody there as well. And everyone was kind of happy with what I was doing and my approach. It was just yeah, it was just an uncomfortable situation. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. So like I was curious earlier, but not because but now you mentioned it. Like I was curious to. I was gonna ask like you never do like events or like stuff happening in the streets, but now you mentioned like the fair. So because I don't really see that much or too much in your photos, and you don't really or you like to go out and challenge yourself with like the layers and stuff. So you still go to like street events, I mean like fairs or like parades or whatever, or is that less your thing?
No, I still do because there's still the opportunity to shoot in the way I do shoot. So one of the tricks is trying to isolate somebody within a crowd.
Yeah,
What I
very
don't
tough.
generally do is go to like demonstrations or any political rallies, things like that. Again, it's another one of those subgenres of street photography which I kind of leave to every other people, the people that are interested in it, the people who are better at it than I am. One thing I find is I see a lot of, I know a lot of people that do shoot those kind of events and those kind of rallies. And if you have a look at their photographs, in a lot of them are more photographers, you know. So there's, it's a really strange environment. When I go shooting outside of doing workshops, I'm on my own. You know, to me, it's a very solitary pursuit. Um, if there's somebody else there, I get distracted and I'm not in the right head space, and you know you can't really get into the zone as well if you're with a big group of people. But I guess if you're shooting political rallies and demonstrations, you don't really need to be in a headspace because it's chaos. There's things happening everywhere, and you can have a big group of you and you're shooting the same things. But it's yeah, it's almost like power in numbers as well. I suppose that might feel a little bit safer working in a group in those environments.
Yeah, yeah. It's I have to say like I did a workshop in October it was, and it was like I think there were 5 or 6 of us, and it did feel safe for me. It did help me get more self-assured on the street. So now I'm more confident to photograph people on the streets. But even then, like I know there's like very little repercussions on the street. Most people don't mind. Most people even sometimes enjoy being photographed or don't notice, which I find crazy. Um, but I do find like yeah, the strength in numbers is still very much at play. Like I do experience if I am with another photographer that I'm much more confident to take certain shots. So it's funny for me that it's reversed with you. Like you prefer to go out alone because you don't have the other photographer looking over your shoulder, or
It's more a case of it's the distraction thing. It's and also that but if you see something, you invariably see the same thing as the person you're with.
true, yeah,
So you either have to say, okay, you have this one, you know, or you have to be bullish and say, no, I'm taking this shot. But it's a weird thing. When I'm out shooting, I want to have every shot. You know, I don't want somebody there to steal the same thing.
no, I get that, yeah,
And also, yeah, I sometimes it does. You do need to be in the zone. You need to like, especially if you're wanting to work the layers and you can see something and you get the space and it's quite tight. If you're shooting through a scratched window, for example, on a specific part of a wall, You can't have somebody else there next to you. And so what are they going to do when you're doing that? They're just going to be, standing around being bored. So I'd rather not hold anyone up. It's like, look, you do your thing, I do my thing. There's a street photographer, another street photographer you're probably familiar with that works Cambridge called Craig Whitehead.
Yeah, I've got his book even. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we've known each other for years, and we've shot the same streets over and over and over again. And we a lot of our stuff's fairly similar because we're shooting the same streets and whatnot. And we know how the light moves around the city and whatnot. But we've started doing collaborative workshops. We started doing them last year, and it's amazing that although I've known him for this long, we've never really shot together. Maybe we did it for an hour one day, and so I'm learning how he takes photographs, and it's amazing because I always assumed he'd be the same as me, but everyone's got their own styles of shooting, even if you're coming up with the same results. It's quite educational.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's also why I do this podcast because it's I think it's funny how we street photographers we like to communicate and we like to work together with each other, but at the same time, street photography is a fairly solitary activity. So it's like we have to talk and connect more, I think, and talk more, and you learn a lot from just looking at someone or just hearing from someone how they act. It's also because I had a lot of questions at first because I have a website and I saw like on the search results like people were looking for example for like best street photography lens, but there's no real answer. But talking to other people can inspire you. Like for example, a few months ago I was talking to Manja de Prater, and she used like a 24-70 millimeter lens, which by coincidence I have here in front of me, but it's just because I haven't put it away yet. But I don't like it for street photography. Like it's too bulky, it's too annoying for me. It gives me too many options. Like I like to have like a prime lens. But I did go out and try it because it was like, okay, maybe she's onto something. And then I remember Tilo Jenig, he kind of sold on that lens. Now it's like the 28 millimeter, which for me was way too wide. But I was like, okay, let's try it. And I think like there's no correct lens, but it's just like find out what works for you. But listen to other photographers, see what they're doing, try it once, try it twice, and then decide if it's for you. But it's like I've read these books where it's like 50 millimeters is the right street photography lens, which I enjoyed and I believed for a long time. But and I like the 50 millimeters by coincidence, but there's like no real answer. But looking to other photographers, it can inspire you to try new things and find the right way to work for you.
Definitely, you could. Yeah, like I said, there's no right answer. People message me all the time about, oh, what lens do you use? What camera have you? I want to do street photography. What camera have you got? It's like, well, I can tell you all of these things. I can even tell you like what settings I use. But you're shooting a different location, different lights. It's not going to turn you into a street photographer.
No, yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Just
like
get a basic camera, get out there and just start taking photos, and then you'll start working out what does work for you.
true. Even with your phone, like you could try and see. And you have
Yeah,
several lenses in that, so that's
yeah,
super
totally.
easy.
Yeah.
Um, so let's turn back to the people and the silhouetting in your photos because like a lot of the time there's a lot of questions about. I got one recently, but it's maybe not really relevant for you. But like GDPR in Europe, I'm not sure if it's still in works in the UK. Um, but like in street photography, of course, there's a lot of privacy concerns. Is that something like why you started silhouetting, or is it more like because you just find it aesthetically more interesting?
For me, it was the challenge initially. And as I've said before, yeah, I mean, it does help if someone does confront you and say, "Oh, did you take a photo?" and you show them the silhouette. There's not really any comeback from that. They won't say delete it because it's like, well, how you can't improve it to you, Um, but for me, primarily, it was the challenge of me. How can I elevate my photograph of somebody walking just a normal? I think they call it stride bys. Someone just walking past a backdrop. How can I make that more interesting? It's like, well, make it a silhouette or try and obscure the person by using forced perspective or just focusing in on something in the foreground so that the human elements slightly out of focus, and again, you can't tell who they are. Yeah, it was that kind of thing. I just wanted to just challenge myself to think, how can I improve the photograph?
Yeah, that's cool. And is it like, did you saw it inspired by someone else, or was it just like something that you? Because what I noticed in our first minutes of the conversation is like you really like stumbled into, or well, like stumbled sounds like very inconsiderate, but it's like it seems like a very natural evolution for you how you went about a lot of things in photography. Was that the silhouetting? Was that something you just like saw in a photo of yourself and tried to continue, or was it something that you got inspired by?
It was something that I accidentally got, and I think I'd kind of ruined the shot. I think it was someone like half in, half out of shadow. There's a great street in Cambridge where you can get some really good angles, um, strong shadow points on the ground. Um, and it was there when I started sort of just experimenting and see how can I use this light? Do I want the face in shadow, or and the rest of the body in light? Do I just a hand or an arm? And it really was. I've got like loads of just body part pictures where just parts of people are emerging out of the shade. Um, but then for me, it was a case of right now I just want the whole person in there, but still retain some kind of definition of the human element. So in that respect, yeah, I've kind of moved on to the full body. Um, but yeah, I mean, also there's quite a lot of other photographers on Instagram when I started, like doing similar things. I mean, Craig being one of them, and I always loved his work. Like Joshua Jackson, like his work, like amazing. Um, so yeah, as well as the past masters, there's also the contemporary street photographers as well that yeah, hugely inspiring.
Yeah. Do you find yourself looking at other people's work a lot, or is it more like once in a few times you go through a book or through Instagram and it kind of inspires you, or?
I know a lot. I mean, like I said before, I'm not really a gearhead. I don't spend a lot of money on gear, but I do spend a lot of money on photo books. So
Yeah.
I've got tons of photo books because yeah, I just love looking and poring over those kind of images and just thinking, wow, how have they done that? And a lot of the stuff, especially the past masters, you've got these are places I've never been to and maybe will never go to, and I definitely won't go to them when it was taken maybe 50 years ago. So you've got that whole nostalgia element to it as well, and you just think this is incredible, and you only hope that some of the photographs I'm taking today will hold some kind of gravitas that these guys have got. So
Yeah, but that's what I find so interesting. Like talking about the gravitas of their photos, it's like because they were in like it was a totally different like era, of course, in time, but also in like how the let's say market. It sounds so so corporate, but like how the world of photography was like. There was less resources, like I think like less photos in general as well. So it's like, did they do? Would they? It's like would those photos held up today? Like and some without question would, but it's like sometimes I'm like, if someone made that photo today, would it be such a classic photo? And it's
yeah, it's hard to know, really, isn't it? I think um, because there's just such a wealth of photographs now of similar scenes. Yeah, it probably wouldn't hold as much weight. Um, but yeah, you never know. Like I say, time. Some photos I've taken, I just think, oh, they're terrible. But you kind of sit on them and think maybe in 50 years' time, they'll because you've got that nostalgia element, and you look back at the street signs that are really familiar to us and quite boring and overwhelming because they're everywhere. Maybe in 50 years' time, we just think, oh yeah, that's lovely, that's amazing. I remember that street as it was, and it doesn't. I can look at photographs now, more historical photographs, not necessarily street photography, photographs taken by the masters of street photography, and they still like make me think this is amazing. This is such a great photograph because it's got all the old street signs and there's people milling around. Um, yeah, um, I think it's just the nostalgia thing and the interest in history.
yeah,
So
maybe yeah. Do you revisit your own photos a lot? Because you mentioned like sitting on your photos.
not really, no. I uh, maybe some of them. It's just because the way social media works, the way Instagram works, especially. I find myself reposting a lot of stuff because to churn out content for every single day is almost impossible. Especially when you get to a point where you're like incredibly self-critical, and I can go out and take photos for a day and just think they're all terrible, and I don't really do anything with them at all. Just like format the card kind of thing. But the process was still the important thing in my head um, for me on that particular day. So yeah, what I'm doing, I'm just reposting a lot of old stuff, and it's almost like I'm constantly reviewing my old material in that way. I'm just thinking, does this still have it? Is this still good? Does it still represent what I do? Some make the cut and some don't. But you're almost creating that classic volume of your own work in doing that.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Yeah, that's. I'm coming at a point that I start to have older work, so I'm starting to look into it. Yeah, but it's like, yeah, for me it's like older work is like a year old, but I see the evolution. But I can imagine, yeah, over like how long was it? 8 years or 9 years? You said like I can imagine there's like a big portfolio and a big chunk that's maybe not really cutting it anymore.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's loads, but like I say, it's all about the process and the journey. I don't like that saying that. It sounds a bit
No, but
stupid,
I get it. Yeah.
but it really is. And you just think, okay, yeah. For me, and also, yeah, we were going on about how times were different back in the old days. You think about the way Vivian Mayer used to shoot. She used to go out, take photos that she'd never even print, and it was all about the process. And it was her pastime, and it was like her, yeah, that's what she enjoyed to do. And and that's kind of the same for me. I don't. I still prefer the process than like the end result. It's kind of why I still prefer to take the photos than do the editing. You know? So yeah, that's one thing I try and push on the workshops as well. It's like this is a great having a creative outlet as photography or music or like any kind of art. Yeah, it's a great thing for your head. Or even if you go to the gym a lot, just having that outlet. Everyone needs something like that for their own mental well-being.
Yeah, I think like for me, starting hiding photography, I underestimated how physical it was.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of walking, a lot of well, if you do it professionally as well, a lot of gear that you have to get with you. Well, not for street photography, but for events and stuff.
Yeah, and also long days for the events, isn't it?
Yeah, there are some long days. Yeah, but sometimes, like for example, I have to go to Amsterdam in 2 days. So then for me, it's like okay, I'm there, so I can visit Amsterdam and do some street photography there as well. So it's like sometimes it's a nice combination. It
Yeah,
gives
yeah, that
opportunities as well.
sounds good.
So, but yeah, it's some days are exhausting. Um, okay, so yeah, I wanted to start wrapping up there. Maybe I was just curious to like maybe you could tell people more about your workshops, how they work, how they can get in touch to book one or the schedules for your workshops, kind of like that.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, I run group workshops as well as one-to-one workshops. My group workshops are maximum of 6 people. Um, it's a nice amount of people to walk around with. Obviously, if you've got a big group, it's difficult to keep everyone together. But also, you become just this mass on the street where you're just getting in everyone's way, and it's a nightmare. And it's also quite difficult to impart information to everybody as well. So I keep the groups pretty small, and I do one in Cambridge every month, and then one in London every month. The days differ, but my website has all the information on there.
And those other groups and the one-to-ones, they're just like whenever or
Yeah, the one-to-ones are whenever. I mean, I've got my booking site again available through the website. Is you can just go on there and pick a day that suits you, and then pick a location. And currently, I'm doing Cambridge and London, and also Canterbury, which is another small town, nice, beautiful, historic town here in the UK. And then in the summer, I also do Margate, which is where I live, which is a lovely
only
seaside.
in summer or
Only in summer because it's so small. There's just no footfall. and I
Oh
like to
yeah.
be able to at least guarantee there's going to be some people to take photographs of. So, I try not to promote Margate until sort of summertime, where there's more people about and there's great lighting. It's a lot easier. And then on top of those workshops as well, I also this year I'm going to build on the collaborative workshops I did with Craig Whitehead, 6 Feet Under. Going to continue doing them with him, but I'm also going to do with other photographers as well.
And
So
so what's a collaborative workshop? Is like both of you take a day, or how does that?
no, so we're both there. So it's basically two tutors, and then so with me and Craig, obviously people get different ways of shooting similar scenes, but to get similar outcomes. It's also a good opportunity for people to sort of pick our brains about how we shoot, ask any questions, those kind of things. Um, because sometimes these other photographers don't really do workshops at all. It's a bit easier for them to do it as a collaboration. Um, Later on in the year, in March, I'm doing one with Gareth Danks, who's a YouTuber and he's a commercial photographer. Great guy, great street photographer as well. So yeah, that'll be a fun one as well. Uh, and that one's going to be in Bristol, so that's sort of the western side of the UK.
And is that like a new city for you as well, or is it like you get to know the place in advance, or?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, sorry, so like Bristol, is that for you like a newer place, or is it something you really discover research as well, or?
I know, yeah, I've shot there a couple of times. Gareth knows it a lot better because
Yeah,
it's closer to him. Um, but what I find, I've got a lot of people in the country who sort of struggle to get over to the eastern side of the UK, and so it'd be nice to give them an option to like do a workshop over there.
that's cool. Yeah, okay.
And then yeah, throughout the year, I've got some other photographers lined up. I haven't announced them yet, so I won't be able to announce it to
No,
you
no, yeah, but
yet.
I'm linking your website in the show notes and in the description, so people will find it whenever they listen to it. What the next workshop is. So
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, and people can like DM me on Instagram or drop me an email if you need any more information. It's all on there, but I'll try and make it try and sort of open up the workshops as early as possible. But yeah, I don't have specific dates.
no, I can imagine. Yeah, that's no, that's great to hear. So yeah, I'll put all your information in the description, also in the show notes, so people can find you if they haven't already. Because I mean, you're a big photographer by now. So thank you, Matt, for being here, and see you maybe in a workshop in Margate maybe
In the summer.
in the summer. Yeah, I
Yeah.
won't come in winter. No,
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me on. It's been lovely talking to you, Fred. And yeah, take care.